5 years. That's how long Seraphina Moonwhisper had been living in the abandoned lighthouse on the edge of the howling cliffs, where the land met the sea in a violent embrace of rock and wave. 5 years since the rejection that had shattered what little remained of her fragile hope. 5 years since she had walked away from pack life and decided that isolation was kinder than the constant reminder of what she would never be. The rejection itself played in her mind like a worn recording, even now. Alpha Marcus Blackwood standing before his entire pack, his voice cold and final as he declared that he could never accept a blind Omega as his mate, that her sightless eyes were proof of the moon goddess's curse upon her bloodline, and he would not risk contaminating his pack with defective offspring. Never mind that Seraphina wasn't entirely blind in the way most people understood blindness. She could see, but not the world that others saw. Where they saw trees and sky and faces, Seraphina saw fragments of time that hadn't happened yet. Visions that came unbidden, showing her futures that might be, warnings of dangers not yet realized, glimpses of joy and sorrow yet to unfold. But try explaining that to a traditionalist alpha who believed that anything different from the norm was a curse to be feared and rejected. To Marcus and his pack, Seraphina's white, sightless eyes were mark enough of her unworthiness. The fact that she needed a walking stick to navigate the physical world only confirmed their prejudice. But that was 5 years ago. Seraphina was no longer the broken Omega who had stumbled out of Marcus's territory with tears streaming down her face and nothing but a bag of belongings and her walking stick to guide her. She had learned to survive alone, to use her visions not as a curse but as a tool. The lighthouse had become her sanctuary, and the isolation had become her shield. She had her routines. Every morning she would wake before dawn and feel her way to the lighthouse keeper's room where she kept her few possessions. She would prepare tea using the herbs she grew in carefully organized pots, each one memorized by location and scent. She would spend her days tending her garden, mending fishing nets for the few rogues who knew of her existence and paid her in food and supplies, and listening to the visions that came. Some visions were small. A storm approaching in 3 days, a traveler who would arrive seeking shelter, a ship that would wreck on the rocks if she didn't light the warning beacon. Other visions were larger, more terrifying. Wars that might come, deaths that could be prevented, futures branching out in endless possibilities, each one dependent on choices not yet made.
Seraphina had learned to navigate these visions the way she had learned to navigate the physical world, carefully, methodically, trusting her other senses to fill in what her eyes could not see. She had built a good life here, or at least a bearable one. Yes, it was lonely. Yes, there were nights when the wind howled around the lighthouse, and she ached for connection, for touch, for the warmth of pack bonds she would never have again. But lonely was safer than rejected. Alone was better than cursed. The vision hit her 3 days before they arrived. Seraphina was in her garden, her hands buried in soil as she planted winter herbs, when the world dissolved around her. The present fell away, and she was suddenly somewhere else, somewhen else, experiencing a future that hadn't happened yet. Blood. So much blood. The lifehouse surrounded by soldiers in royal armor. A male's voice, cold and commanding, ordering a search. Her own voice, desperate, pleading. Then pain, sharp and overwhelming, and the vision shattered into fragments too quick to follow. Seraphina gasped and fell backward, her hands clutching at the earth to ground herself. The visions always left her disoriented, but this one had been different, more intense, more personal, and threaded through it all had been a presence, an awareness so powerful it had made her Omega nature want to submit, even in the vision. An alpha, a very dangerous alpha, was coming to her lighthouse. For 3 days, Seraphina prepared. She didn't know if she could change what was coming. Her vision showed possibilities, not certainties, but she could at least try to survive it. She hid her most precious possessions, prepared emergency supplies, and rehearsed explanations that might satisfy whoever was coming. When the pounding came on her lighthouse door on the third evening, Seraphina was as ready as she would ever be. "Open the door." The voice was male, carrying absolute authority and zero patience. "This is Commander Cassian Ironheart of the Royal Guard. We know someone is inside. You have 10 seconds to open the store before we break it down." Seraphina's heart hammered in her chest. Commander Cassian Ironheart. She had heard of him even in her isolation. The Alpha King's most ruthless general, a warrior who had never lost a battle, a male so powerful that even other Alphas feared to cross him. What could he possibly want with her? "I'm coming," she called out, forcing her voice to remain steady. She grabbed her walking stick and made her way to the door, counting steps from memory. 23 steps from the garden entrance to the main door. She had walked this path 10,000 times. When she opened the door, the scent hit her first. Alpha, strong, overwhelming, mixed with steel and leather and something wild that made her Omega instinct scream both danger and desire. Then came the sound of breathing, not just one person, but many, at least 12, maybe more. "Who are you?" The commander's voice was directly in front of her, and from the direction of the sound, he was tall, very tall. "What are you doing in this lighthouse?" "My name is Seraphina Moonwhisper. I live here. I'm the lighthouse keeper. And you're trespassing." There was a moment of silence, and she could feel his attention sharpen on her face, on her eyes. She knew what he was seeing. White irises, with no pupil, no focus, the unmistakable mark of blindness. "You're blind?" he said flatly. It wasn't a question. "Very observant, Commander. Yes, I'm blind. Is that relevant to whatever brings you pounding on my door in the middle of the evening?" "We received intelligence that a spy for the rebel forces is using this lighthouse to send signals to enemy ships. We're here to search the premises and apprehend anyone involved in treason against the crown." Seraphina felt her blood run cold. Treason? Rebel forces? She had nothing to do with any of that, but she knew from her vision that he wouldn't believe her easily. "There's no spy here," she said firmly. "Only me. I live alone. I light the beacon to warn ships away from the rocks. Nothing more." "Then you won't mind if we search?" It wasn't a question. The commander moved past her, his shoulder brushing against hers, and she felt the jolt of contact like a physical shock. The next hour was chaos. Seraphina stood in her carefully organized living space and listened to 12 soldiers tear through her home, knocking over her memorized arrangements, disrupting the order that allowed her to function independently. She wanted to scream at them to be careful, that she had everything positioned exactly where she needed it, but she bit her tongue and waited. When they found nothing, because there was nothing to find, the commander returned to stand in front of her. "Your home is clear," he admitted, though his voice held no apology for the disruption. "But our intelligence was specific. Someone has been sending signals from this lighthouse. If it's not you, then who?"
"I don't know," Seraphina said honestly. "I'm here alone. I have been for 5 years. I see." She stopped herself. Explaining her visions would only make things worse. "You see what?" The commander's voice sharpened with suspicion. "Nothing. I see nothing. I'm blind, remember?" She felt him move closer, felt the heat of his body as he invaded her space. His scent wrapped around her, making her Omega Major respond in ways she hadn't felt in years. It was terrifying and confusing and absolutely unwanted. "You're hiding something," he said quietly. and his voice had dropped to something almost intimate. "I can feel it. What aren't you telling me?" Before Seraphina could answer, another vision slammed into her consciousness. The lighthouse beacon exploding in flames, ships crashing on the rocks, screams, death, so much death. And through it all, a laughing figure she couldn't quite see, watching the destruction with satisfaction. Tonight. It would happen tonight. Seraphina gasped and staggered. And suddenly, there were hands on her arms, steadying her. The commander's hands. The contact sent sparks through her skin, and she pulled away as if burned. "Don't touch me," she managed, her voice shaking. "What just happened?" he demanded. "You had some kind of episode. Are you ill?" "I'm fine." I wasn't fine. I was terrified. Because I'd just seen the future. And unless I could convince this suspicious, dangerous alpha to believe me, dozens of people were going to die tonight. "Commander, I need you to listen to me. I know you don't trust me, and I know this will sound insane, but you need to post guards on the beacon room tonight. Someone is going to sabotage it." "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I see things." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "Not with my eyes, but with my mind. I see the future, or possible futures. And I just saw the beacon exploding tonight, saw ships wrecking on the rocks, saw people dying. You came here looking for a spy, and you're right that someone is using this lighthouse for treason. But it's not me, and they're coming tonight." The silence that followed was deafening. Seraphina waited for him to laugh, to call her insane, to have his soldiers drag her away. Instead, when he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "You're telling me you have prophetic visions?" "Yes. And these visions are why you're blind." Seraphina hesitated, then nodded. "The moon goddess gave me the ability to see across time, but took my ability to see the present. It's not a curse, no matter what some alphas believe. It's a gift, just not one that's easy to explain." "Show me," the commander said abruptly. "If you can truly see the future, prove it. Tell me something that will happen in the next 5 minutes." Seraphina closed her eyes, not that it made a difference, and reached for the threads of possibility that always hovered at the edge of her consciousness. She sifted through them, looking for something immediate, something verifiable. "One of your soldiers, the beta with the scar on his left hand. In 3 minutes, he's going to drop the lantern he's holding and burn himself trying to catch it. The burn will be on his right forearm, just below the elbow." The commander said nothing, but I heard him gesture to someone. Then we waited. Seraphina counted heartbeats, trying to stay calm. If she was wrong, if the future had shifted in the moment since her vision, he would never believe her about the beacon. At 2 minutes and 47 seconds, she heard the crash of breaking glass, a yelp of pain, and a male voice cursing. Sorry, sir, I dropped the lantern and damn it, that hurts." "Let me see your arm," the commander ordered, his voice strange. There was rustling, then silence. When he spoke again, his voice had changed entirely. "It's exactly where she said it would be. Right forearm, just below the elbow." Seraphina let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Do you believe me now about the beacon?" "I'm starting to." The commander moved closer again, and this time Seraphina didn't pull away when his hand touched her arm. Gently this time, carefully, as if she might break. "Tell me everything you saw in your vision, every detail." For the next 20 minutes, Seraphina described what she had seen. The commander listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions, his hand never leaving her arm. The contact should have felt intrusive, but instead it felt grounding, keeping her anchored to the present while she described a terrible future. When she finished, the commander was silent for a long moment. Then he began issuing orders with the efficiency of a career soldier. "Marcus, take 4 soldiers and secure the beacon room. No one goes in or out without my direct authorization. Petra, I want patrols circling the perimeter every 15 minutes. Logan,
Send a runner to the nearest port and have them delay any ships planning to depart tonight. And someone find me a working lantern." The soldiers scrambled to obey, and Seraphina found herself alone with the commander again. She could feel his attention on her, steadying her in a way that made her acutely aware of her appearance. Her white eyes, her simple clothes, her scarred hands from years of living alone. What did he see when he looked at her?
"Why are you living alone out here?" he asked quietly. "An Omeba with your gifts should be valued, protected, not isolated in an abandoned lighthouse." "Should be," Seraphina repeated with a bitter laugh. "But reality doesn't always match what should be. My last alpha believed my blindness was a curse. He rejected me in front of his entire pack and made it clear that no wolf of value would ever want a defective Omega." She felt the commander's anger spike, felt it in the way his hand tightened on her arm and the growl that rumbled through his chest. He was a fool. "So people keep saying. But it doesn't change the fact that I'm blind and alone and—" "Extraordinary," the commander interrupted. "You can see the future. You just prevented what could have been a catastrophic attack. You're living independently in one of the most isolated locations in the territory. That's not defective. That's remarkable." Seraphina felt tears prick behind her sightless eyes. When was the last time someone had called her remarkable? When was the last time someone had seen her gifts instead of her limitations? "Thank you," she whispered. "But you should know, Commander, the vision I had about you when I saw you coming here, it showed blood and pain and fear. I don't know if I've changed that future by telling you about the beacon, or if there's still danger ahead." "Then we'll face it together," he said simply. "What's your name? Your full name?" "Seraphina Moonwhisper. Most people call me Sarah." "Sarah." He said her name like he was tasting it, testing how it felt in his mouth. "I think you and I need to have a much longer conversation about your abilities and how they might serve the kingdom. But first, we're going to catch whoever is trying to sabotage your lighthouse." The attack came at midnight. Seraphina had felt it building for hours, the threads of possibility converging on a single point in time. She was in the beacon room with Cassian and 4 of his soldiers when the door exploded inward. What followed was chaos. 6 rogues burst into the room, all of them armed, all of them clearly trained fighters. Cassian's soldiers engaged immediately, and Seraphina found herself pushed into a corner as the fight erupted around her. She couldn't see the battle in any traditional sense, but she didn't need to. Her vision showed her what would happen seconds before it occurred. She saw a rogue moving toward her from the left and ducked before the blade could connect. She saw another aiming for Cassian's blind spot and screamed a warning that let him deflect the attack. She saw the leader of the rogues reaching for something at his belt, explosives meant for the beacon, and yelled for someone to stop him. It was Marcus, the beta with the burned arm, who tackled the rogue leader before the explosives could be armed. The device skittered across the floor, and Cassian was on it in seconds, disabling it with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this before. The fight lasted less than 5 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. When the last rogue was subdued and restrained, Cassian was at Seraphina's side immediately, his hands running over her arms and shoulders, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did any of them touch you?" "I'm fine," Seraphina assured him, though she was shaking. "Your soldiers protected me, and my visions helped. I could see what they were going to do right before they did it." "You saved my life," Cassian said, his voice rough with emotion. "That warning about my blind spot, I would have taken a blade to the ribs without it. You saved mine first, when you pushed me out of the way when they burst in." They stood there for a moment, his hands still on her shoulders, both of them breathing hard from adrenaline and fear, and something else that Seraphina didn't want to name. "This doesn't make sense," one of the soldiers said, breaking the moment. "Sir, why would rebels send 6 trained fighters to blow up a lighthouse beacon? What's the strategic value?" It was a good question. Seraphina had been wondering the same thing. She reached for her visions,
looking for answers, and what she found made her blood run cold. "It's not about the beacon," she said slowly, piecing together fragments of future possibilities. "The rebels knew about the convoy. They'd been planning this for weeks, and—" She paused, following a particularly dark thread of future probability. "Commander, this isn't over. This was just the first attempt. They're going to try again. When? I don't know exactly. Days, maybe weeks. But they will try again, and next time they'll be more prepared." She turned her sightless eyes in his direction, wishing she could see his face. "You need to take me with you when you leave." "What?" "If I stay here, they'll come back for me. They'll realize I can see their plans, and they'll either kill me or kidnap me to use my visions for themselves. I'm not safe here anymore." The words hurt to say. This lighthouse had been my sanctuary for 5 years. The thought of leaving it, of venturing back into a world that had rejected me, terrified me. But staying meant dying, and Seraphina had worked hard to survive to give up now. Cassian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You're right. You're not safe here. And more than that, the kingdom needs you. Your ability to see future attacks, to warn us of dangers before they happen. Sarah, you could save thousands of lives. Will you come with us? Not as a prisoner, but as a valued member of the royal territory." It was the same offer, more or less, that had been made to Lyanna in the vision memories Seraphina sometimes received when touching objects. The echo of another rejected Omega finding home with the royals. But where Lyanna had been offered sanctuary, Seraphina was being offered purpose. "What if I see things you don't want to know?" she asked. "What if my visions show futures that are painful or difficult? What if I warn you about dangers and you choose not to believe me?"
"Then I'll be a fool," Cassian said simply. "But I promise you this, I will always listen to you. I might not always follow your advice, but I will never dismiss your visions as delusions or curse your gifts. You deserve better than the alpha who rejected you. Let me prove that not all of us are blind to real value." The choice should have been harder. Seraphina had spent 5 years building walls, protecting herself from exactly this kind of vulnerability. But as she stood in her lighthouse beacon room, surrounded by the aftermath of a battle she had helped win, with an alpha commander's hands still gentle on her shoulders, she realized that maybe survival wasn't the same as living. "One condition," she said finally. "If I come with you, I need to know that my independence will be respected. I won't be locked away like some precious oracle. I won't be treated as fragile or broken because of my blindness. I've learned to function on my own, and I need that autonomy protected." "Agreed," Cassian said immediately. "We'll provide you with resources, with assistance when you need it, but you'll have freedom to make your own choices. You'll be a consultant, an advisor, not a prisoner or a pet." Seraphina took a deep breath and made her decision. "Then, yes, I'll come with you." The journey to the royal territory took 3 days. Cassian insisted on traveling slowly to accommodate Seraphina's needs, which both touched her and irritated her. She had been navigating difficult terrain on her own for 5 years. She didn't need to be coddled, but she appreciated the thought behind it. What surprised her most was how patient Cassian was in learning how to assist her without taking over. He would offer his arm when the terrain was particularly rough, but never grabbed her or tried to guide her without asking. He described their surroundings when she asked, but didn't overwhelm her with unnecessary details. He positioned her tent near his own each night, close enough that she felt protected, but not so close that she felt smothered. And he talked to her. Really talked. Not the stilted conversations she remembered from her old pack where people spoke carefully around the blind Omega as if she might break. Cassian asked about her visions, genuinely curious about how they worked and what limitations they had. He shared stories of his own experiences, his rise through military ranks, his frustrations with pack politics.
On the second night, sitting by the campfire after the soldiers had gone to sleep, Seraphina found herself asking the question that had been bothering her. Why are you being so kind to me? What do you mean? You're the Alpha King's most feared general. Your reputation is built on ruthlessness and uncompromising, but you've been nothing but patient and respectful since you found me. Why? Cassian was quiet for so long that Seraphina thought he might not answer. Then he said, "Because I know what it's like to be judged for something you can't control. My mother was a rogue who died giving birth to me. I was raised in the royal pack on charity, always reminded that I wasn't truly one of them. I had to be twice as good, twice as strong, twice as loyal to earn even a fraction of the respect that others were given by birth. So when I see someone like you, someone with extraordinary gifts who's been rejected and isolated because of prejudice and fear, I recognize that, and I refuse to add to it." Seraphina felt something shift in her chest. This fierce, powerful alpha understood her in a way she hadn't expected. "Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for trusting me enough to ask." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the crackle of the fire and the sounds of the forest around them. Then Seraphina said quietly, "I had a vision about you, about us, before you arrived at the lighthouse. What did you see? Pain, fear, but also—" She hesitated, unsure if she should continue. "Connection. Something deeper than just commander and advisor. I couldn't see the details clearly, but the feeling was intense." He heard Cassian's breath catch. "Are your visions always accurate?" "They show possibilities, not certainties. The future can change based on the choices we make." Seraphina turned her face toward him, wishing not for the first time that she could see him properly. "But some futures are more probable than others, and this one feels very probable." "Sarah." The way he said her name made her shiver. "I need to be honest with you about something. From the moment I saw you in that lighthouse doorway, something in me recognized you. Not just your gifts or your strength, though those are impressive. Something deeper. My wolf side has been restless ever since, and I think—" He paused, and I could hear the struggle in his voice. "I think it recognizes you as mate." Seraphina's heart stopped. "That's impossible. I was already rejected once. The mate bond doesn't give second chances."
Maybe it wasn't a true mate bond with your previous alpha. Maybe it was just pack obligation or forced proximity. But Sarah, I've never felt anything like this before. And if my instincts are right, if you are my true mate, I need you to know something important. What? I will never reject you. I will never see your blindness as a flaw or your visions as a curse. If you're mine, then I'm yours, completely and absolutely. But I won't push you into anything you're not ready for. We can take this as slowly as you need. Or if you don't feel the same connection, if your visions show a different future, I'll accept that too, and we'll just be allies. Your choice. Always your choice. Tears were streaming down Seraphina's face. She reached out with trembling hands, and Cassian immediately took them in his own, steady and warm and real. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "The last time I trusted an alpha with my heart, he destroyed me. I don't know if I'm brave enough to risk that again." "Then we'll start small. Let me earn your trust one day at a time. Let me show you that not all alphas are like the one who rejected you." He brought her hands to his lips and kissed each palm gently. "I can wait. I've been waiting my whole life for someone who sees me as more than just a weapon or a title. I can wait however long you need." Seraphina closed her sightless eyes and reached for her visions, looking for the thread of possibility that showed her future with this alpha. What she found made her breath catch. She saw herself laughing, truly laughing for the first time in years. Saw herself working alongside royal strategists, her visions valued and respected. Saw herself in Cassian's arms, safe and loved and whole. Saw a future where her blindness wasn't a curse, but simply a part of who she was.
no more defining than the color of her hair or the sound of her voice. It wasn't a certain future. There were still dark threads showing pain and loss and struggle, but it was a possible future, a probable future, and it was so much brighter than anything she had imagined for herself in 5 years of isolation. Ask me again in a month, after I've had time to see if your actions match your words, after I've learned to trust again. Ask me then if I feel the mate bond, and I'll give you an honest answer. 1 month. And Sarah, I'm going to spend every day of that month proving to you that you deserve to be loved exactly as you are. The royal territory was overwhelming in the best way possible. Seraphina was given quarters in the advisor's wing of the palace, spacious rooms that she quickly memorized and organized to her preferences. She was introduced to the Alpha King himself, who listened to her visions with genuine interest and immediately put her insights into use in strategic planning. But what meant the most was how the pack treated her. No one stared at her white eyes with disgust. No one whispered about curses or contamination. When she needed assistance navigating unfamiliar spaces, wolves offered help respectfully and accepted gracefully when she declined. When her visions helped prevent 3 separate attacks in the first 2 weeks, she was thanked and valued rather than feared. And through it all, Cassian was there. True to his word, he didn't push for anything romantic, but he was present, checking on her daily, asking about her visions, inviting her to strategy meetings, walking with her through the palace gardens while describing the flowers and trees. He was patient and kind and exactly what he had promised to be. Seraphina found herself falling in love with him gradually, naturally, the way ice melts from spring sun. It wasn't the desperate, terrified love she had felt for Marcus, always trying to prove her worth and earn his acceptance. This was different, easier. Cassian already accepted her completely. All she had to do was accept herself and accept the possibility of happiness. On the 28th day, Seraphina had a vision that changed everything. She saw war coming, a massive assault by rebel forces that would devastate the kingdom if not prevented. She saw battles and blood and terrible loss. But she also saw victory, contingent on decisions made in the present. And threading through it all, she saw herself and Cassian fighting side by side, his strength protecting her body while her visions protected them both. When she came out of the vision, she was shaking. Cassian was there immediately. He had been sitting with her when it hit, and he caught her as she swayed. "What did you see?" "War. Soon. Within weeks." She gripped his arms, feeling the strength of him, the solidity. "Cassian, I saw us fighting together. Saw you trusting my visions even in the chaos of battle. Saw us surviving because we worked as a team, as partners." "We are partners," he said gently. "Whatever's coming, we'll face it together." "As partners," Seraphina agreed, "and as mates." She felt him go very still. "Sarah, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I feel it too. The bond, the connection. I've been feeling it for weeks, but was too afraid to acknowledge it." She reached up with trembling hands and found his face, tracing the features she couldn't see but had memorized through touch and description. Strong jaw, straight nose, lips that smiled more than his reputation suggested. "I'm saying that 1 month is almost up, and I've watched you prove yourself every single day. I'm saying I love you, Cassian Ironheart. And if you still want me, if you still feel the mate bond, then I'm yours."
When he kissed her, it felt like coming home to a place she had never been, but had always belonged. The mate bond snapped into place with an intensity that stole her breath, and suddenly Seraphina could feel him in her soul, his emotions, his devotion, his fierce protectiveness and equally fierce respect for her independence. "I love you," Cassian whispered against her lips, "my extraordinary, powerful, beautiful mate. Thank you for giving me a chance. Thank you for being brave enough to trust again." "Thank you for being worth trusting," Seraphina whispered back. "Thank you for seeing me, all of me, and loving what you found." The war came 3 weeks later, exactly as Seraphina's visions had predicted. But with her insights and Cassian's leadership, the kingdom was prepared. Battle after battle was won not just through military might, but through strategic advantage gained from Seraphina's ability to see the enemy's plans before they materialized. And when the final battle ended in victory, when Cassian returned to her bloodied but alive, Seraphina realized that her blindness had never been a curse. It had been the price of a gift that saved thousands of lives. Her rejection by Marcus hadn't been the end of her story. It had been the beginning of her real journey. Sometimes, rejection is just the universe clearing space for something better. Sometimes, isolation is necessary to learn your own strength. And sometimes, when you finally allow yourself to trust again, you discover that the mate bond isn't about perfection. It's about finding someone who loves you not despite your differences, but because of the extraordinary person those differences helped you become. The blind Omega who saw the future had finally found her present, and it was more beautiful than any vision.